Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode number 24 of the Food Startups Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Matt. Matt, how's it going, buddy?
Danny, feeling really good, man. I'm feeling a very abundant energy. My mindset has changed in the last few days.
Really? So talk to me, what's going on?
Well, actually just finished Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, and it's about practical stoicism. So it kind of made me, appreciate what I'm doing and gave me some great tactics for some applied philosophy to having that tenacity and relaxed intensity and positive spirit in the food business.
Cool. That sounds super academic. I've been working really, really hard. I've been getting pretty deep into manufacturing chocolate in the past few weeks in small batches for different projects and also just for the love of chocolate. And I've been really pleased with that. But also, man, that stuff is hard work. Manufacturing is really hard work.
I bet. And Danny, side question. I'm not in chocolate, but I would assume that, does it ever get annoying? Because I'm sure people always, mix up the words. Sometimes they say chocolate, sometimes they say choco, sometimes they say cacao, sometimes they say cocoa. Does that happen with you a lot?
Well, there's a lot of confusion because, the terminology is pretty different. And cacao and cocoa, they're the same word in different languages. Cacao is the Spanish word for cocoa. And chocolate and chocolate, it's all kind of a little bit confusing just because people have different experiences with chocolate growing up. So, you have to go with, you got to try to be consistent and then not let it try to get to you if people are like, well, you're using that term incorrectly.
Yeah, and Danny, as you know, I've been on the hunt just for personal use of cacao pods. And even asking the so-called chocolatiers in Bogota, they're unable to get it. And they even recommended against it. But it was actually Danny who got me interested in eating cacao pods. Because if I'm wrong, Danny, you're the expert here, but that's got to be the highest antioxidants, straight out of the pod.
Well, listen, we're still kind of learning about cacao's antioxidant qualities. What I mean by that is that, cacao by all has had ORAC counts higher than any other food in the world in its unfermented form. And in its fermented form, they're really, really high as well. If they're digestible, there's some questions as to what the digestibility is. There's a lot of stuff that we're still kind of going to be learning about and discovering in the coming years. And, that stuff happens in food though, right? I mean, coconut oil 20, 30 years ago was a big no-no. Now it's, the most popular oil of the cooking industry. It's like the darling. So,
I guess it hasn't come out, but I'm thinking unfermented natural is going to have the highest antioxidant level, but I haven't thought about digestion. I know with maca, the raw maca, sometimes there is a problem with digestion, so the gelatinized maca may have a higher absorption rate. So maybe it's, still to be determined. But in any event, I really love eating out of cacao pods.
Definitely. And I just, I'm just playing devil's advocate after a long day of work. I mean, I love eating cacao straight out of the pod. I actually have been putting it into green juices recently, simply because of the fact that it gives a nice little kind of mouthfeel because it's a little bit crunchier. So, it gives you have a nice texture with it, and also you can eat more and more quickly. And one other thing for you guys who have never had cacao pods before, you can store cacao pods for a long time in your fridge. After a while, they get to be a little bit staler, but that means it's a little bit harder to eat. But at the same time, listen, if they're really, really healthy for you, they definitely haven't gone bad. You can tell that they haven't gone bad. They've just grown a little bit stale. So throw them into a green juice shake, and there you go.
Fantastic. And I will definitely link to a photo of a cacao pod. It's just a beautiful thing to look at.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I mean, cacao is one of the most beautiful fruits that I've ever seen. Every single time I go to a farm, I'm kind of like mesmerized, and people are like looking at me like I'm an idiot because they're like, "What do you mean you've never seen cacao before?" But I really like, it comes in all shapes and sizes, and you always, it's just a sight to see.
Well, speaking of looking like an idiot, entrepreneurship is kind of about that because as you start, you're inevitably going to make a lot of mistakes. And there will be certain people who see you as an idiot, and that's okay. You know, you're going to become an expert, but that's just part of the process. And you have to grow some thick skin. And today we have thought about, you know, Danny, like we've had some great experts, you know, true experts on our podcast that have shared, you know, some really valuable information with us. And we thought, okay, you know, these are experts. Most of them are very well established in the food industry. So we want to take a step back as two young entrepreneurs starting their food company. What are 7 takeaways that we've gotten from our own podcast?
I think that the wisdom I've gained from seeing different sides of different businesses the past 2 months has really helped me level up. Having things in the back of my head reminding me to do this, reminding me to do that, it's been kind of game-changing, to be quite honest. And I hope that some of our listeners think so as well. And so Matt and I, we're going to go over 7 things we've been kind of emphasizing in our businesses, in our day-to-day. So Matt, you want to kick it off?
Sure. And just so you know, it's called Count the Pickles, and we're going to explain that at the end. So hopefully that catchy title will have some significance and help you remember these lessons. And yes, Danny, I will kick it off. The first one, this is what we learned from Juan Luis at Perumix, is about focusing on a niche, becoming a disruptor, and knowing your environment. I think the biggest takeaway here, Danny, is picking a trend or something that's trending in a direction that's favorable to you, you know, a growing market.
Definitely. I mean, that's absolutely huge because a lot of times you don't have, as a startup, you don't have the money to educate people on a new product, for example, if it's not discovered or trending yet. You know, you don't have millions of dollars to introduce a new product into the food system in the way that, let's say, General Mills does. Really great point.
A step further with Perumix, right? They're trying to take the perception of Peruvian food is that it's very expensive, and it is really expensive in Colombia. But in Peru, it's cheap and delicious, and Peru is a growing trend. So he wanted to do like a Peruvian fast food. So he took advantage of a very popular business book called The Blue Ocean Strategy. The Blue Ocean Strategy is where you combine 2 industries that, by combining them and creating a new type of product, you're taking the best of both industries. And the best example of a non-food thing, I think, will be Cirque du Soleil. You know, they took the theater and the circus and combined it. So they have like the elegance of the theater, but the visual excitement of the circus, but with a lot of advantages. Like, you know, one of the advantages being they don't have to use animals, which are expensive to maintain and purchase and train and travel with.
Definitely. I would hate to be in the animal raising industry. And so I'm glad that they, found some lessons and were successful with that. So let's move on to number 2. Circle Up taught us about having a business plan. They taught us how they vet their companies, that they help other investors, qualified investors, invest in. And that's really got me focusing hard on developing a business plan in my business. And what has it helped me see? Well, some unexpected things really, but listen, I've begun to understand how much money I'm going to need to invest before I really, really scale out to be a regional, national, profitable company. And that's really hard. It's hard to do without a business plan. Everyone is in the food industry always thinking about their next product, the next launch that they might have, but they're not thinking 3 or 4 steps down the line. But you gotta be because, if your bank account hits 0, then you're out of business. And it's been great to think about it. It's been great to know what I'm signing up for and also look at how my business is going to evolve. So really happy about that.
Yeah, I agree. And Danny, that's a good point. But if my bank account hits 0, I think I'm just going to call Circle Up.
Fair point.
Zing.
All right. So, I've been thrilled to have that experience, to really hear from experts who are, they're really good at, people who are expert in investing. They have a lot to teach food entrepreneurs. A lot of food entrepreneurs start off their businesses with a passion project, and passion doesn't speak dollars and cents. But, I'm going to kind of contradict myself and go right into number 3. give away stuff for free. Okay? Now, give away stuff for free is what we learned with Jeff Moore. Jeff Moore was just talking about how incredible of a marketing material your products are in themselves when you give them away for free, when you're communicating with your customers, when you have targets and you're letting your customers know, hey, listen, I'm out there. This product is out there. I need you to try it. I want you to make it popular. I want this product to go from being a baby to being a big, big, big company or a big product, a big hit. And so, the best way to do that really with, a lot of small companies don't have marketing dollars, but you do have a product that you buy at a wholesale price, and being able to get the feedback that you need, being able to really get it out there, it can be really, really huge for you. So, I appreciated that lesson from Jeff a lot.
Right. And if you go back and listen to that episode, I think it's important to point out he did it in a very measured, strategic way. He created like a flash website, like a separate domain that, for this free giveaway. And he used that, I think it was like freeseafoodsomething.com. That's not I'll find the link and put it in there, but he created this flash website that may not even be active anymore, but by making a targeted flash free campaign, it got picked up and got a lot of press. It wasn't just giving it away for free just to Joe and Tom and just random people.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's true. You can have very specific goals around that, around what kind of information you want to capture if you're doing any testing on your products. And you can really, you can use your product as in a marketing way. And so, great advice from Jeff. One thing I also want to say is that, it also feels good to be a good dude if you're giving things away. It feels good to have energy around your product because of the fact that people pick up on when you're trying to sell really easily. When listen, I feel really good when I give away samples of my product. I feel good, and that kind of energizes me because I realize what I'm doing this for anyway, which is trying to create something that has a positive impact on people's lives. So, sometimes in the day-to-day business, you can forget that. And so giving away your product, having people enjoy a product that you're sharing with them is really awesome.
So give away your stuff for free and be a good dude. What is next, Danny?
Okay, so number four. All right. This is going to be a big one for a lot of our location-independent friends in the Colombian community, in the community that we've been in of the 4-hour work week types. Have processes from day one. Having processes is absolutely critical in the food business. And one of the ways that I have found it to be particularly useful is it actually, when I have a process that lets me see myself scaling something out. Okay, let's say I have a process where I have a sales team and I know that I'm going to need to be in 100 new stores in the next 6 months. Well, I see myself being in 100 new stores, and I also kind of see myself a few months later on being in 200 and 300. And I see myself I kind of have a little bit of a shift as far as being more ambitious. I think on a bigger scale, and I also am able to think about the things I'm going to have to do later on. That means getting a new supplier if the supplier I have right now isn't cutting it. If I need to have a new facility. These things are really important and kind of actually, listen, no doubt about it, with food startups, a lot of the time you're playing in the territory of having a hobby versus having a business. And this really helps you focus on having a business. When you have a hobby, you're kind of sloppy. You let things, you're giving away, you're giving away all your things for free, actually. A lot of the time when you're having a hobby, and you're not taking them so seriously. And so when you have processes from day one, let's say for me, I've really focused on accounting processes in the last few months, just making sure that I'm able to process all my receipts. I have a lot of expenses that can be expenses on that seem like they're travel expenses or food expenses, and they're really business expenses. So I want to make sure that I'm showing the IRS that all my things that my business is in order.
Right on. Yeah, I think a lot of these things, at least for me, Denny, I have some processes developed, some I still need to do, and a lot of it's fear. It's not easy to know that the amount of money required to become national is way more money than you have right now. But those are things that you have to face because you need it in the back of your mind so you can kind of subconsciously move towards them.
Absolutely.
All right. Number 5, be a true expert so you can tell your story. And I want to talk about education. And just listeners, I don't mean about getting a degree per se. It could potentially pay off in your situation, but at least for me, I can speak from my own experience where, I'm very focused on health foods and exotic health foods that are not well known, things that we don't know about. So for me, my job is I have plenty of disadvantages. I do not have millions of dollars to invest like some companies out there. But what I do have is a drive to read everything about my products, any type of article that comes out in English or Spanish, things about nutrition, antioxidants, which are huge, even the anthropology. I like to know how my products are used in Latin America. So when they come to the US, I can kind of explain that and try to adapt it to the American culture, which is quite different. So it's really, really about focusing, knowing as much as possible, and this will give you an advantage. And I learned a lot about this from Robert W. Thurston, who we had on, and he has Oxford Coffee and wrote the book on coffee, right? He wrote probably my favorite book on coffee out there. And while he's still growing his business from an entrepreneurship side, I have no doubt that while he may have problems with distribution and logistics, when it comes to sales and people ask him about coffee, without any type of effort, without any forced effort, he's going to be able to educate you on the coffee and what you need to buy. And without even trying, people are going to want to buy from him.
Yeah, Matt, and that's exactly right. That when you are an expert, you're able to tell your story more fluidly. You're able to admit and say that you came from humble origins if you had a food startup that really, that started out of your basement. And you're able to do it in a proud way. And I think that that's really, really cool. Another thing is that you're also able to, as an expert, say no to things when people ask you about information because you're not competing with them about who knows more. You're cool. You know that you've researched thoroughly the field. You've spent time with the product. And a lot of the time, listen, I don't know about you, but I've gotten requests from different folks to, help teach them about what I've done in Latin America with cacao. And sometimes, I really want to help folks, but when they're only looking to extract information, when they're kind of playing the who knows more game, I don't need to be in that game because I'm focused on what I'm focused on. And because I can also say, no, listen, sometimes these requests are not worth my time. And, the food game, it takes a lot of time. So why waste your energy? And, some people might not agree with that, but I think it's really helped me. When I think of that I'm an expert, I can say no to things.
Fantastic. Moving on to number 6. This is really important. You have to know that you're in it for the long haul. We have so many influences of get rich quick. To be fair, if you misjudge and don't read the book, the title of the 4-Hour Work Week, you have to be in it for the long haul. And so what does that mean? One, you have to know this is not an overnight success type thing. This is going to be a long-term project. So you're going to have to dedicate, to make it scary, probably a double-digit percentage of your life to this business. So, this is a big commitment. And we learned that from Kamut. This started in the 70s with Bob Quinn and bringing, a few ounces of grains to a state fair in California, then going back to Montana, and here we are today in 2014, and he's still working with it. So it really makes you question, I have to think, what do I really like in the food industry? Now, right now, I'm experimenting, and I would say testing certain things and pretty active in others. But I need to be conscious of what I really like, not what I think I like, but what I really like, because where I have success, I'm going to stay there for a long time.
Cool, Matt. I really like what you said around that. I think that Kamut is also an excellent example of folks who have had passion for a long time. A few other things. When you're in it for the long haul, you better be happy with the friends that you have in the industry. And that's a question for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, living in Latin America, working in Latin America. It can be tough sometimes. So, if you have a long-term outlook, you'll be able to ask questions early on, and you'll be able to kind of, you won't have any surprises coming to you down the line. What I mean by that is, listen, man, sometimes we get together, we have a little venting session about, what business is like in Colombia. But listen, we know what we're signing up for, and we know, we're not in it just for 2 months where we're going to go back to the United States. And so knowing that we're in it for the long haul really, really helps me stay stable and then stay focused.
Right. And yeah, it's also interesting. That's a good point, Danny, that I didn't think about, when we were planning this podcast, is the industry itself too, right? The people you're working with. Now, I come from an industry, and I'm kind of close to, internet marketing, right? There's some great people in it, don't get me wrong, but there's also a lot of people that they're kind of like cheesy and they come across as insincere. And I realized the internet marketing niche, that's not necessarily like strict internet marketing. That's not really where I want to be in the long term. So I definitely know I don't want to do that. And so far, my experience with the food industry has been positive.
Absolutely. People are going to be eating food forever, and so there are going to be food businesses forever. I really like the long term. I love that the long term aspect really gets your values in line. That means that, you're looking towards growing out a business that has long term value for its customers. You're not just looking to make a quick buck. It's something that makes me really, really happy. Okay, so listen, we have this kind of count your pickles number 7 that I want to move on to. What does count the pickles in the pickle jar mean? And where's the reference from?
So the reference comes again from the Jeff Moore International Pacific Seafoods, his interview about his company. And he basically said when he was in food services selling to a restaurant, he said, listen, my price might be a little higher, but there's more pickles in the pickle jar for my company. So he always thought about the customer first. And so he actually sat there with the owner of the restaurant, and they sat there counting the pickles of each jar to prove his point.
That's really interesting. And so because of the fact that he went that extra mile, you think that that's a good lesson, that you want to go the extra mile in your business.
Yeah, I think you have to go the extra mile. It's just not enough, Danny, to just deliver your product to a store. It's got to be, you have to do a great job of it. And if they need you, it's not like, hey, Danny, I got a problem with my product. Can you come by my store? And you say, oh, yeah, I'll get you. Come by, in a couple of weeks. If you really care about it, you'll find a way to make it there the same day or the next day, depending on things. You can tell when someone's really interested and they really care about the other customer. I know so far that in food, I really, really care. One is I know about building long-term relationships. I want to see the people I sell to have success with my products, because I'm happy sharing these exotic health food products. And 2, this is also my livelihood. I better take it seriously, because this is, as we talked about, this is not a hobby.
This made me think about something, Matt. So when we were talking about processes before, and processes are awesome, but man, to find success in the food industry, you really got to fight for it, tooth and nail. You really end up having you end up having to do everything yourself. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I've had to, watch over every part of the importation process of my products. I've had to watch over every single design iteration, and there are all these things that come up. And so when you know that that you need to go above and beyond, when you know that you're the person at the end of the day that's really providing the value, and then later on it's your team and what your company's brand is that is providing the value, that's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. Like on the one hand, it kind of sucks that things don't go as planned a lot of the time in the food industry. But when you know that that's what the game's about, that things never go as planned, and then you have these expectations, and then you know that you're signing up for going above and beyond, there's some comfort in that, man. There's some comfort.
Really tying this back in, the Ryan Holiday book is all about practical stoicism, right? Which is taking every setback and turning it into an opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, listen, I love the that title for Ryan Holiday's new book. What is it again?
The obstacle is the way.
The obstacle is the way. Well, yeah, it's a very Taoist title. No, but man, I mean, that's what it's about. It's just that if everything is super easy, you're not getting anywhere, because everyone's going to be doing the same thing, and then you're always going to be back at step 1. And also, if everything's easy, you're not just going to be challenged enough. So, go after your weaknesses. Go after the things that are just really tough to do. And that's what's always interesting about the food industry. New foods are coming on the market because of just different manufacturing processes, because we're getting access to different parts of the world. This is some of the most exciting stuff. For me, man, this is like Columbus discovering the world, like my importing chocolate into the U.S. or, seeing other folks importing this or that or opening up this industry. That's like the new world, And so I really like it because it's these huge challenges, man. It's these huge challenges. Whereas if you're sitting back, relaxing and being maybe being an internet marketer, listen, man, it's really tough to do too. No disrespect, nothing against that. But at the same time, I think it's a different, you're entering a different playing field. And this one's different. It's harder. It's harder to make money. But ultimately, I guess it sounds like, for me, it's more fulfilling.
And that's obviously a personal choice for everyone. And we've already talked about it. We had the episode where we talked, should you really be in the food industry? And because of the difficulty behind it and of the startup capital, I think it's a topic that's worth for you and I and for our listeners to keep coming back to. Is it the food industry? Or maybe is there a certain part of the food industry that's not really worth it anymore? And we're going to try to keep touching on these topics because those are things that I know come up in Danny and I's conversations as well as some of our listeners.
Absolutely. It's great to hear from all of the guests that we've had about the struggles that they've been through, about the similar doubts that they've had. I think that these lessons have been really great in, casting an awesome light on the food industry.
Great. And guys, all of these 7 points we made, if you want to get a more in-depth understanding of them, I've highly encourage you to go to the episode that we interviewed that expert.
Absolutely. So that's from, Juan Luis at Peru Mix to Jeff Moore. Jeff Moore's International Pacific Seafoods.
I would just go 18 through 22. I think it's the easiest way.
Yeah, and so that means looking at episodes 18 through 23, check them out. Really try to understand what these entrepreneurs are going through and, how they've made successful businesses. And I guarantee you that they're really going to help you level up as well.
Great. Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning into our show. Danny is our Twitter expert. Do you have any exciting Twitter news for the Food Startups podcast?
Oh, well, listen, we're trying to make sure that we get our interviews out there, that we get feedback on what we're doing, how we're doing it, and most importantly, just kind of the material and the questions that we're asking. Because, listen, there's so much value in getting to know a successful food entrepreneur because they've been through a lot of the struggles that you're inevitably going to face. Because the food industry is fascinating. It's fascinating. It's so close to each and every one of us. We touch it every single day with the food that we eat. And so, having people tell us stories on why things exist in the way that we do, we really want to hear it from you guys. So we're going to be active on Twitter, asking questions and answering them from you guys.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, find us online at foodstartupspodcast.com.